What is up, my people? Welcome to another video. Today, we're gonna have fun today. We're going to try to recreate or try to, recreate an ancient martial arts. And this is something that's always been a question of mine and a question of a lot of people. When it comes to martial arts that are extinct, or martial arts that not a lot of people know about, or there's only like a few moves and the rest of the martial arts isn't really there. And I'm talking about Aztec martial arts or Nahuatl martial arts, or Toltec martial arts. And the reason I'm emphasizing on Toltec and Nahuatl and even Mesoamerican is because the Aztec were really a combination of tribes. It wasn't just one tribe, it was a combination of tribes that united together to create the Mexica, as they called themselves the Mexica, not the Aztecs. And I think the word Aztec was actually an insult to them, or something like that. By the way, this is my cat. I want you guys to look at him because he's awesome. And also, I changed the filter a little bit so you guys could see what I see, because I kept telling people his eyes are reddish orange, and they changed colors, but people didn't believe me, so I was like, maybe it's the way I see it, because everybody sees things differently. So I changed the filter a little bit so you could see what I see when I see into those beautiful red evil looking eyes. But anyways, let's continue here. One of the ways that I'm trying to recreate the martial arts, or kind of try to figure out what an ancient Mexica martial arts or a Toltec martial arts would look like, or what would a Mexican, rather, that's really what I'm thinking about. What would like a Mexican martial arts look like? And asking ChatGPT, this is an old version, by the way, of ChatGPT. Asking ChatGPT, it mentions a couple of martial arts that would be similar to something that might be practiced by the ancient, warriors that used to live in Mexico. Hold up here, because there's traffic in my neighborhood, which is crazy. There's never traffic over here. But I think on here we have, what do we have here? A bunch of Chinese martial arts, judo, karate. Where they got, I think Aikido is somewhere around there. And yeah, I was just thinking about that. I was like, I personally thought, and this is my personal opinion, and I'm going to tell you why later, but I personally thought that Mexican martial arts would be, kicking. Would be some kicking, not a lot of kicking, but it would be some kicking. It would be mostly punching, like type of punches, like more like strikes, different types of strikes, and a lot of wrestling. So basically it'll be like something in between Muay Thai and karate, and a lot of wrestling type type movements, maybe like judo or something like that. And the reason I thought that is, I personally think that humans kind of tend to fall, like what they end up doing tends to fall into what their ancestors kind of did in the past, whether they want to or not. It kind of falls in line on its own. And I could go into different examples, but I don't want to I don't want to insult other countries and other cultures, and I want to stick to either Mexico and the U.S. because I am Mexican American. So when it comes to Mexico, you know that there's a lot of violence in Mexico. The history of Mexico has a lot of violence, and in the beginning, even there was a lot of blood with the sacrifices and the cutting off of heads and rolling them down pyramids and stuff like that. And you fast forward a couple of years after that, and we had a revolution in Mexico, where you had people screaming out, "Long live the revolution," which kind of means that you want constant war, which is kind of weird to me. I don't know if that's what they meant, but it sounded like that's what they meant. "Que viva la revolución," and you're like, damn, I want this shit to end already. So there's a lot of history of violence, and you fast forward all throughout time, Mexico, kind of a violent place, there's a lot of blood being spilled there. And you look at the cartels today, and it's kind of the same thing. And I think it's the same thing in the martial arts. I think subconsciously or consciously, we kind of fall in line to what we've been falling on. There's a couple of changes, of course, technology, more self-awareness and awareness of your actions and stuff like that. The consequences of your actions, rather. And that allows us to change a little bit for the better and become less violent. But, the violence is still there nonetheless. Anyways, it's like they say, the more things change, the more things stay the same. And some things, some things just kind of stay the same, for whatever reason. And the same thing goes with the U.S. The U.S. is a little bit more complicated. But like, for example, something that I've noticed is the New Yorkers, they have a sense of pride in New York. And it stayed that way, for a really long time. Until today. And I was looking at the movie Gangs in New York. And there was like a lot of diversity, but at the same time there was a lot of racism. And this mentality that, it's us against them and stuff like that. And there's always this resentment, and I know I'm not gonna speak too much about that because I'm not sure, but from what I can tell, they kind of still have a hate for the British. I don't know if it's because every time I see in boxing, every time I see a British boxer or whatever, they always talk shit about them, especially like in the East Coast, like New York, Pennsylvania, all of these places. There's like a resentment in the air there when it comes to to British fighters. And one of the videos that reminds me of it is, when Andy Ruiz fought Anthony Joshua, I think it was in Madison Square Garden, and everybody in New York was rooting for Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz being from probably like Arizona or California, right, of Mexican descent, Mexican American. Nothing to do with the East Coast, right? Nothing to do with the East Coast. But everybody and their mama was rooting for the Mexican American dude. And you could hear the crowd going crazy, dude. And I feel like that's part of the reason why Anthony Joshua lost the fight, was because he just didn't understand how everybody was rooting for a guy that they have zero to do with. And, probably had more in common with Anthony Joshua than Andy Ruiz. Or not really, I really don't know. But you could hear, I remember watching a video, and a guy lost his voice, bro. He kept saying, "Send them the fuck back home! Send them the fuck back home!" Like with his heart and soul screaming out, "Send him the fuck back home." Speaking about Anthony Joshua, the British fighter. And I was like, the amount of hate for this guy is incredible, because I don't even understand it, to be honest. But then you start thinking about it, the history of New York and the whole colonization thing and all of this shit. Whether you want to believe it or not, it stays into the psychology of the land that you live in. And I believe you kind of grow up with it. Whether you felt it or not, whether you lived it or not, you kind of, it kind of influences you in a way. But yeah, it's kind of funny how humans work, and how rivalries just sprung out of nothing, and there's other examples, of course, that I could go into, but like I said, I only want to stick to the U.S. and Mexico, because those are the countries that I know the most about, and those are the countries that I'm connected to. I don't want to speak on other countries that also do things that are also in, like, there's countries that are more propense to suicides. I don't want to talk about why, but there's a connection there to their past. Whether it be for reasons of honor or reasons of just they don't want to live anymore. But the point is that it's embedded in their culture. That's my point. Like, for example, it's not an excuse that it was for different reasons. Like I said, when it comes to Mexico, whether it be for the god of the sun god, or whether it be for money, heads are gonna roll. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like, it's embedded in the culture. In Americans, not so much today, but Americans are naturally rebellious. We just naturally want to rebel, and we want to go against whatever it is that's stopping us from being ourselves. But I think that ship has sailed as well, because the way things are looking right now, and I don't want to get into politics, but the way things are looking right now, maybe our rebel spirit is finally dead. But anyways, by the way, this is Octagon, or Octagon, something like that. He used to be my favorite Mexican wrestler. And the funny thing about him is that he was supposed to be like a martial arts based character. And one of the funny things that his enemies would do to him was tie his bandana that was connected to his mask for some stupid reason. And the funny thing about it is, like, his enemies would use it against him, because they would tie his bandana to the ropes, and then they would start, like, wailing away at the guy, like just with his fist. I mean, not paws, but they would just start like hitting him in the face, and he couldn't move. Like, that. At the time, I was like, somebody save up to go, no! My hero. But now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, bro, you're stupid for bringing out bananas like that are connected to your mask. That's not a good strategy at all. But getting back to the topic of today, which is Mexican martial arts, or what would a Mexican martial arts look like? Off the bat, I would say, it's probably going to be mostly punches or strikes with the hands. A lot of wrestling and grappling type things. Definitely weapons. There's going to be a lot of weapons involved in the whole thing. Because the Aztecs would the Aztecs, and not just the Aztecs, but just Mesoamerica in general, and all of the Nahuatl cultures would also have these clubs, these sword clubs that they would fight with. And there were all types of modifications, by the way. Like the most famous one, of course, is the regular macuillero. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's an ancient word, so that's why I can't pronounce it. It's not even Spanish. Oh shit, we got horses. Yeah, but anyways, the other thing about Texas is like you could be driving down the highway and you got a bunch of cowboys on the side of the road dropping pellets of shit. Yeah, did you guys know that horses poop as they walk? That's crazy. They just drop freaking deuces as they walk. Just clack, clack, clack. But anyways, that's Texas for you. But what was I saying? Yeah, the martial arts, the Mexican martial arts, and what it would look like. Because it's a topic that I've always wanted to tackle. By the way, this is AI. At the end of the video, stay tuned, because I am going to draw my own personal, what I think it would look like. I'm going to draw like a character that looks like a Mexican martial artist, and I'm going to draw a symbol that characterizes Z martial arts, or would characterize Z martial arts if it was real. And that's going to be me drawing it. It's not going to be AI, but I did get ideas from AI, as you can see here. But just in case you guys are like, oh, it's AI, it's not real, just know that at the end of the video, I am going to show you my drawing. Hopefully you guys enjoy that towards the end of the video here. But it was weird to me, because from what I think, like I said, it would probably be wrestling, boxing, and maybe some Muay Thai kick or something. But it in the opinion of AI, it seems to think that it would be more connected to like Chinese martial arts, and I feel like the reason they think that, or the reason AI thinks that, is because it is a popular belief amongst people that Mexican martial arts are similar to like Shaolin Kung Fu or animal style Kung Fu. And the reason being that the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Toltecs and all of these Mesoamerican type warriors and cultures, they really like nature, and they they try to they try to model their warriors to certain animals like the snake, the wolf, the jaguar, the eagle. These types of animals were revealed, or what was the word? Revealed? Yeah, they liked them. They really respected them, and they wanted to be like those animals. Sometimes they would think these animals were majestic or stuff like that. Um, and because of that, they kind of believe that they could have had like an animal style system, which kind of makes sense in a way. I get that. Another martial arts that they mention a lot is Kali, um, which is I believe it's Filipino. Filipino martial arts, if I'm not mistaken, or it could be, because Kali I know is a god, an Indian god, right? A Hindu god. But I think this refers to the martial arts, which is a Filipino martial arts that they uses knives, sticks, um, and weapons like that, like nunchucks, I think as well. So it's a hand to hand melee type martial arts. Um, it has disarming types of movements. So if your opponent has a weapon, you can disarm your opponent and stuff like that. Um, and it's funny, when I put into the AI, I just said Toltec or Nahuatl martial arts, because those are the main cultures that influence the Aztecs and the Mayans. In fact, the Toltecs, they're the ones that influence them the most, because they have the art. They still copied, all of the other ones copied the Toltecs. But anyways, they came up with these, which looks like Filipino fighters, which is crazy because I get why they say that there's similarities. The Filipinos were also conquered by the Spanish as well, so there's definitely similarities probably there as far as martial arts goes. Um, so of course I went into AI again, because the Chat GPT had a bunch of updates. The last one I think was about 3 years ago, maybe, when I did that one, and this is an updated version. So I asked the question again, and it gave me a different answer. It gave me more in depth answer. In fact, it gave me more than I needed, to be honest. So one of them was capoeira, of course. Um, Traditional indigenous martial arts, Mexican traditional dances, which is very interesting. This is a theory of mine that I had before ChatGPT. I think I mentioned it in another video. That and I'll tell you why Mexican traditional dancing could tell us um, could tell us what the martial arts looked like back in the days, if it existed, which it did. Because remember, they took kids in at 11 or 12 years old to start learning how to be warriors. So there was definitely something going on that they were teaching them. I'm pretty sure they weren't teaching them how to play tag or whatever. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, of course, is another one. Aikido, Kali, like I just mentioned, Sistema, and you started going into the spiritual aspects and lessons that I could do or whatever. I guess I thought that I was actually gonna try to make the new martial arts, but I just like it as a concept. I like it as kind of like an art project. It's really what this is an art project. And towards the end, I'm going to show you guys the art that I'm gonna make. I haven't started on it yet. This is gonna be before I start on it. But I also try to get some ideas from AI into what a symbol would look like, a martial arts symbol. Similar to, for example, Tai Chi has the yin yang sign. Um, and for example, what else? The Taekwondo has the same thing, but it's blue and yellow, which is similar to the flag. So that's what I'm trying to see if we could make something like that, like a symbol. And it looks like they gave me a jaguar with wings, which kind of makes sense if you think about it, because the two main animals, um, that the Aztecs would revere was the eagle warrior and the jaguar warrior. Um, so combining those two would be, I guess, like a jaguar with wings, which is pretty cool. You kind of see the yin yang signal at the bottom. I kind of see a wolf there, so we'll just have to see what we could do. And so let's talk about some of the stuff that AI mentioned. So karate, and the most ancient form of karate is Okinawan karate, which is called I forgot what it's called, Kyokushin, I think. It's the same martial arts that Daniel San would do with his teacher. What's his teacher's name? Not Miyamoto. Oh, bro, it's gonna be embarrassing. Damn, I forgot his name. Anyways, I was gonna say Master Igwe. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just bad with names sometimes. But the point is that martial arts is very ancient martial arts, and I think the further back we go, the more pure the martial arts is, and the more violent it is, and the more closer to being realistic it becomes. Um, and that's why I think that the closest thing we could get to, in my opinion, would be Okinawan karate. And also, Okinawan karate has a lot of weapons that are similar to the weapons that the Aztecs would use. Um, and that's another reason why I kind of agree with it. And plus, I think karate was mentioned in both analysis of AI, in both answers that AI gave me. The new one and the old one, karate was mentioned. So definitely something to think about, because some of them were mentioned. Capoeira was the weird one, in my opinion. Judo was mentioned. I just got this picture because I thought it was funny. Because you know how some people say size don't matter. It's about technique, which is true. But sometimes, bro, sometimes the size is just too much. But judo is definitely one of these martial arts that I could see the Aztecs using, because when you have weapons, right, first melee weapons, and if the martial arts that you're taught with the melee weapon doesn't work, and you lose your weapon for whatever reason, the last resort would have to be, wrestling. Disarming your opponent, or getting close to your opponent and grabbing something and breaking it. Also, the Aztecs and the Mayans, not so much, but if you looked at the Aztecs, and the way they used to dress, they were usually covered in a kind of like a gi like material, but it was long sleeved, which is like most gis. But what I'm trying to say is that would be very easy to grab and do like a judo throw on, like for real. Um, the Mayans didn't really, from what I see in depictions, they really didn't have anything on them, like any type of cloth on them, but the Aztecs did. So that's just something to think about. If you have like a really tough cloth, because it was really tough cloth that would prevent arrows from piercing it. So it was rough, but I'm pretty sure that you could still grab it and throw somebody. So judo is definitely one of those that at least the Aztecs would probably be familiar with, or incorporate, in my opinion, some type of judo technique. Another one that was mentioned was kenjutsu. Kenjutsu being some type of, and I had to look this up, by the way, some type of sword fighting, or traditional sword fighting. And there's different types of sword fighting in Japan. There is some that are focused simply on on the draw, meaning you gotta draw, make a strike, and then put your sword back in. I forgot what that's called, but there's a martial art just specifically just focused on that. Um, and then there's others that are focused on the whole dueling aspect of it. Um, and there's others that do it simply for spiritual and cultural reasons. Meaning they're just trying to keep the tradition alive, so they kind of LARP pretty much. And that's fair. Another one that was mentioned, I don't know if I went over it or not, but Tai Chi was mentioned. Which is kind of weird to me because Tai Chi has always seemed like a one of these exercise type martial arts. But I've always known, that a lot of martial arts were suppressed because of different governments. So different governments would tell people to not do this, not do that, especially if it was magical. Like the one thing I have realized is that through the years of history, in every culture, magical things have been suppressed and attacked more than practical things. And to me, that's kind of weird. I mean, you got to kind of think about it. It's like, okay, like, just because it looks magical doesn't mean you should attack it. Maybe there's something behind it that people find that they need in their lives. Like, for example, Tai Chi is very meditative based and very movement oriented based. Um, Another martial arts that was mentioned and goes right along with it is Kyugon. I think it's called Kyugon, which is the same thing, but it's more spiritual and it's less about the movements. Um, and Kyugon is more repetitive. It's like you're gonna do one movement and you're gonna do it over and over again and focus on the internal aspects of it. Actually go through the movement slowly so you can see how your body feels when it does that. Do it over and over again, breathe in, breathe out. Right? And Tai Chi is more you got to learn all of these movements and do them from A to Z, and then from then you go to other movements that are more complicated and stuff like that. But if you investigate most modern day martial arts, like Tai Chi. Tai Chi is a modern day martial arts, even though it's been around for a long time. But what I'm trying to say, if they survive to today, they're not going to be its purest form. So I'm thinking that Tai Chi has secret movements within it. And the reason I say that is because it's the same thing that happens with martial arts like capoeira, which we're going to talk about today a little further down. Um, but martial arts like capoeira, it's a dance disguised. I mean, it's a martial arts disguised as a dance. And practicing movements that keep you sharp and athletic and ready for combat. But it also hides, like I said, it hides actual techniques. And I think it's the same thing with Tai Chi. I think there's elements of Tai Chi that are grappling based more than punching based. Um, but I would have to look more into it. But I think if it's more grappling based, you start to decipher a lot of these movements, and they're more grappling based, and that would go fit into my theory that wrestling was an essential part of the Aztec martial arts, or grappling based martial arts. Now, Wing Chun is another one that surprised me, but again, looking into it more, there's a lot of hand traps and hand grabs that are built into a lot of these martial arts, like including Wing Chun. Like Wing Chun, in my opinion, is one of the most misunderstood martial arts. I use Wing Chun elements in my boxing technique. There's this thing that I call the catch, It's called a catch and then throw a jab. So catch, throw a jab, but if I throw a jab and your double jab intercepts my jab, then it turns into a um, I open the door for you, so you could go, your energy could go past me, and I end up behind you. Now that is more of a what is it called? What's the other martial arts? Bakakwan, something like that technique, but it looks very martial artsy, you know. But the one that makes it Wing Chun is when I grab with the catching hand, I hook it down, and I come over the top with a jab to the face. And it looks pretty much what he's doing here right now. So the backhand catches your jab, brings it down, and I kind of sneak my jab over your lead hand. And yeah, it's better if I could show you. but yeah, there's elements of Wing Chun definitely in boxing. Um, and I think I went over it in another video when I talked about the differences between torque punching and arm punching, and the strengths and weaknesses of each. Um, but yeah, at first I was surprised that Wing Chun was on here, but then I realized how how much that made sense. You know, and all of these martial arts have traps in them, by the way. Even some capoeira stuff. And have I mentioned capoeira yet? I think it's gonna be mentioned. There we go, capoeira. But yeah, like for example, this has hand trap. There's a lot of hand traps in there, which means you're gonna throw punches, but really you want to trap them, right? The same thing with Tai Chi and Kyugon, right? And you know, when the weapons are done, we still have, you know, the grabs. You see, so even in some Kyokushin, or even in some Okinawan, not Kyokushin, Kyokushin is different, right? Whatever. Even in some Okinawan martial arts, the tension of the grab in between punches, or to grab a punch, is embedded into the martial arts. So if somebody throws a strike, you could just grab, you know. So it's pretty cool how a lot of these martial arts that were mentioned by AI have kind of like grabbing strike techniques. Um, Capoeira is another one that was mentioned, which this one also surprised me because I never thought of like Aztec warriors doing any type of capoeira, because it's a very athletic, it's very, you know, expressive even. Um, but it's interesting because I have my theories of how, like, I have my theories of how ancient Mexicans hid martial arts into folklore dances. And my theory that I have on that is connected to the story of how capoeira came to be, which is capoeira is from what I know, was an ancient martial arts from Africa that they were not allowed to practice anymore because the you know the Spanish were scared of the African slaves revolting against them, rebelling against them, and so they had to hide it in a dance and act like it was just dancing. And that's the legend, right? Um, and and I think the Mexicans did something similar. I want to talk about that a little bit later. Another type of martial arts that were mentioned is Native American martial arts, and just indigenous martial arts in general from all over the world, from the Americas. And the reason for that is because we're very similar. We all migrated from the same place, and they could map it to where It's kind of like it's kind of like a big family, um, that runs all the way through North America, South America, and Central America. Of course, there's some differences, but I feel like the martial arts change with time, but they keep some similarities. Like the if you look at the Native Americans from Northern America, they have some type of stick with a blade stuck on it, which is like similar to an Aztec war club. They also have knives. Of course, most native martial artists use knives as well. Um, there's a lot of similarities. So, by the way, you guys want to check out these guys. Okichitoa, I don't know how to pronounce it, but yeah, they have a thing going on. This guy here, Apache Knife Fighting, Fight Like the Wind. His name is Robert Redfeather. Now, this guy, he's really good, and I learned a lot from him. And I applied some of his knife techniques to my boxing techniques, and I actually just mentioned one of them. It's is the yeah. I'm not gonna repeat it, but the point is some of these techniques, some of these footwork, some of this footwork, and some of these concepts um, run all the way through a lot of martial arts. There's very similar techniques that are applied. Um, and one of the techniques that he used, I used in boxing, and it's pretty cool. But yeah, this guy is nice with the knife. You guys should check him out. And I think that there was probably similarities between these martial arts, these Native American martial arts that run all through the Americas. Um, yeah, this guy beat me to the punch. Um, other Native I don't know why they keep sending me shit when I'm making videos. Stuff I don't even care about, by the way. Like I'm not looking for any of that. What's it? What did he say? Make no sense, bro. Like it's like they know I'm trying to record these videos, and they just send me shit. But anyways, there's also a lot of people in Mexico, kind of using the Aztec roots and whatever to try to promote their gyms, and some of them are actually trying to, keep that spirit going. So that's pretty cool too. So shout out to these guys here. I think they're from this Zilam, which is it's kind of like them doing their version of other martial arts and putting kind of like their Aztec flavor or Mesoamerican flavor or Mexican flavor, you could say. Yeah, like a more Mexican flavor. Another thing that I wanted to mention, before we move on from the native martial arts side of this, um, there is statues that show something that looks like a wrestler. Or a floor type wrestler, which is kind of like a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, which was also mentioned by AI. Um, and they don't know what it is. Some people even say that it's fake, but who knows? Um, but the point is that it looks like a wrestler, so people say that wrestling was definitely part of the Toltecs. And of course, like I said before, we kind of fall into place culturally. We kind of tend to do the same. That's why wrestling is so big in Mexico, and boxing as well. And speaking of boxing, in Mexico, in central Mexico, the Toltecs used to box. So wrestling and boxing were the two main things that were actually found in, uh, stone walls and hieroglyphs or whatever you call them. And these are a couple of them. You can see here at C over at the right hand corner. It seems to be two people wrestling on the floor or something. Then right beside it at B, you see two people kind of boxing there with helmets on. Maybe you can make it out, maybe you can't. So that's the thing, they had helmets on. Over here on the right hand side in the bottom corner, you have the Mayans using the helmet. You can see the helmet. It was made out of wood, and their gloves were made out of seashells. So there you go. And last but not least, I believe these are the Toltecs, and the Toltecs would have these helmets made out of rubber, um, and their gloves were made out of these kind of like brass knuckles, but made out of stone, and they had different designs on them. Um, these are some of the designs that they could depict. These were all found, by the way. These are our archaeological finds, um, and so basically the two main things that we could prove out of the archaeological finds and historical finds is wrestling and boxing. Okay, so and the boxing isn't really boxing. It's more like street fighting because they're using brass knuckles with designs on them, ritual designs. And this boxing was done in order to honor the gods. They would bleed on like a stone, right? And then that blood would be sacrificed to the gods. Some people say it was to the death. Some people say it was just to collect blood. I personally think that it was to collect blood because the way the helmets were designed, it was made for them to withstand the blows but bleed. So the main thing they wanted to do is make them bleed, and then the blood would drip. Because they would find a lot of these round stones, and this is my connection that I'm making. I'm not sure if there is a connection to it, but they would always find these round stones with a hole in the middle. I believe that's what they were. Those were the platforms where they were fighting. It was a circled ring, and they would fight in those rings, and then the blood that would drip into the stone was just the blood that was sacrificed to the gods. Um, and by the way, there's the tradition is still being kept in Guerrero, Mexico, which is where my family is from. Guerrero meaning warrior. Um, so there you go. So keeping on this traditional martial arts, and the other thing that was mentioned is traditional dances, traditional Mexican dances, and this is the one I was talking about when I said the capoeira reminded me of certain dances in the Mexican folklore, folklore. You know what I mean. But anyways, in Mexican folklore, um, in Mexican folklore, there's a bunch of these dances, and you can kind of decipher what they were doing. In my opinion, they were trying to hide a technique of the Aztec war club, or not even the Aztec, just the whole Mesoamericans had war clubs. They were all differently modified differently, um, and some of them were big, some of them were double. Like believe it or not, there was people with double um, clubs. Um, and I remember hearing one of the accounts of the Spanish. He said that he saw an Aztec with a war club that was bigger than himself, and it was long. It was like a long stick, but at the edge, it was a club, and it had knives on the side. So that's way different than most of the war clubs that we come to see in most of the pictures. It's way different. It's not the same at all. So that goes to show you that the war club was modifiable depending on the warrior and the way the warrior wanted to fight. Um, but if you go and you look at this dance, this machete dance, um, one of the things you're gonna realize is that I personally believe that it's kind of teaching techniques, kicking techniques, and and striking techniques. Um, it just seems like there's some things in there that could be deciphered and could be used as how to use a machete. And the reason they were using a machete instead of a war club is because, like I said, they weren't allowed to use weapons, and the main weapon that they had was a tool for agriculture, which is the machete. And that's why the indigenous people of Mexico were using them. And also is because through the dance, I believe personally that they were keeping secret certain techniques that they could use. Um, and I feel like we need to, I feel like we could decipher it if we pay attention to the dance. I see, I see a blocking technique in there. I see a parrying technique, a striking technique. I see footwork. Um, I see circular footwork, and I see a dual type of style. So it's the only two machete style that I've seen, because the Haitians, they have a style of machete fighting. So go look that up. The Haitians from Haiti, they have a machete style. And I believe, who else has it? I don't know. There has to be others. There has to be others because, like I said, the Mesoamericans were using sword clubs, and I think that the machete was the substitute for the sword club, and the machete had elements within it that were similar to the sword club. And the reason I say that is because the machete um, comes with a lanyard, right? And I have to figure out if that was a modification that the natives made, the indigenous people made, because if that's so, you could go back and look at the Mexican war clubs and the Aztec war clubs and the Mayan war clubs and all of these um, cultures, and they all have a hole at the bottom for a lanyard. So that's a big part of how they were using these weapons, and that's a big reason why the modification for the machete happened, um, in my opinion, anyways. But yeah, there's definitely something there. The other thing that you could see in the dances is the way the females move with their dresses, and I see that there's a similarity there between that and the way the shields kind of covered up the feet of the Aztecs, and I think they did that to confuse their opponents, in my opinion. And it could be like, because if they're really um, fast, and the feathers are covering their feet, it's gonna be kind of unpredictable to figure out what side they're going to. And there was a lot of switch hitting, in my opinion, because if you look at the machetes, they have two machetes, one on each hand. And if you look at the dance, they're kind of moving, stepping on with the left, and then they're stepping with the right. They're stepping with the left, stepping with the right. Um, then they hit their foot, so that looks like an oblique kick, right? It looks like a preparation for an oblique kick, and a strike right after that. So I mean, maybe it's my violent mind thinking about it, and it's just just a regular dance. Um, but then you take that into consideration and you look at the shield and you look at the way the females move, and you can't. Sometimes they look like they're floating in the air. You add that to a fight, and you see a guy coming at you, and it looks like he's floating in the air, and then he just moves out of the way and strikes you in your knees, and you're like, ah, what happened to my leg? But it's like, bro, trust me, the Spanish, it took them a while to defeat the Aztecs, and the reason it took them so long is because they were kind of scared of them, because they saw some shit. How do you think they know that their sword clubs could cut off the head of a horse? Now, there could be exaggeration, but I think they cut off the head of a horse, bro. I seriously do. Then they said they saw giant Aztecs or giant Mesoamerican warriors. Um, you have people talking about how good they were with the club and stuff like that. So they had to starve them out to beat them. They had to starve the Aztec out, um, so that they would be weak, and then they came in and they destroyed um, their city. But it wasn't like they went in there mano a mano and beat them, because that's what people think. People think that the armor of the Spanish was so superior that they just went in there and they just destroyed them in like a week or something, which wasn't the case. It took them a couple of years to do it, um, and yeah, it was a strategic move that they did. They cut off their bridges. So what they did is they gathered a bunch of their neighboring um, enemies, and they told them to go cut off the bridges. And they lived in an artificial island in the middle of a lake. And all of their food was coming from the people on the sides. So I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So the way they kept their city was kind of like a pyramid scheme. The closer you are to the center of the city, the more the royalty is, and the priests and the warriors in the warrior class. And then the further you go to the outside of the lake, that's where the farmers were at. And so what the strategy the Spanish and their allies did, Cortez and the allies, which were Native Mexicans, they cut off the bridges and they just waited them out. And after, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks or something, they were all starving and begging to surrender. So they went in there and they destroyed them. That was basically what happened. Now we are at the end of the video, and we got to talk about the last two or three that were mentioned. Actually, it was just three. It was Aikido, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Sistema. Now you know about Aikido. It's a Japanese martial arts, and most famously known from Steven Seagal or Steven Seagal. I don't know if it's Seagal or Seagal, one of those two. And of course, a lot of people say that it's bullshit because it doesn't really work in an MMA setting or in a sports setting. And I always say to things like that is like, just because it doesn't work for one thing doesn't mean that it doesn't work at all. I personally think that if somebody comes at you, with a committed attack, Aikido is perfect for that. Is it the best option? Not necessarily, but I think most of these so-called bullshit martial arts that people say don't work in a competitive setting actually do work in like let's say you're being rushed by a mob of people. you don't really have the time to be jabbing or looking for openings, or you can't really establish the jab in those kind of situations. What you're gonna have to do is take the momentum that is given to you by however many opponents are coming. You're gonna have to revert that or guide that away from you some kind of way. So Sistema is another one of these martial arts that has been talked about negatively, and in a lot of martial arts YouTubers circles and stuff like that. But I always like to say, if it's used by a military and it's taught all across certain militaries, including like Krav Maga is another one that people like to make fun of. I always say, I have been around less time than these martial arts, I believe, personally. I would have to check, but and these people are military people, so I'm not going to be so arrogant to say, oh, I know better than a military system made for the military, for a specific purpose. Like, for example, Krav Maga, which wasn't mentioned, by the way, but Krav Maga is a terrorist control. These guys literally have to fight for their lives, constantly. So am I going to listen to those guys who use it, or am I going to listen to some YouTuber that speaks like this? And just because he speaks like that doesn't mean that he's saying the truth. He's just a guy. Everybody has their opinion, by the way. I'm not criticizing anybody that has an opinion, but I'm always going to listen a little more to someone that has more of a history of using it in certain types of combat. Thing I wanted to say, guys, and I hope you don't hear that stuff in the background, but this is the final product, I guess you could say. Not really a product because I'm not selling shit, but this is pretty much what I came up with. And I did go with something more cartoony. The first one I made was more realistic, but I just didn't like the way it looked. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You can see the symbol that I came up with. It's pretty much kind of like a yin yang sign, but I guess more Mesoamerican or Aztec. I used to see something like this in a lot of their shields and stuff like that, so that's where I got that from. And I turned him more into like a Street Fighter type character, with his moves being more fantastical. As you can see, like Jaguar Roar is more like his projectile. Then you have, Eagle Lance, which is more like an aerial attack. Rolling Serpent, which is like an anti-air. And then you got like something like his Tatsu, which would be Wolf Fang, or something like that. Or it would be probably similar to like a Buster Wolf or something like that. Which I am maining Terry Bogard at the moment in Street Fighter 6. So that's where I got that inspiration from. I was gonna do more realistic moves and stuff, but I felt like that was a little bit too boring, and it would require me to draw an opponent for him so you could see him, and then that felt like a drag, and this just felt a little bit more fun. So that's pretty much it for today, guys. If you